Few people have noticed this, but the greatest economic battle of the 21st century is not happening in stock markets. It's not happening in interest rates, and it's not happening on inflation charts. It's happening somewhere else. Along the routes, trade routes, energy routes, routes of power. And to understand why the United States shows such intense interest in Greenland, we need to go back more than 2,000 years in history and understand one simple but decisive rule. Who controls the routes controls the world. Before we continue, leave a like on this video. That small action helps this channel keep bringing deep analysis without slogans and without propaganda. For centuries, the world was connected by a massive commercial network known as the Silk Road. But here's something most people miss. The Silk Road was not a single road. It was a complex system of land routes and sea routes connecting China to the Middle East, Africa, and Europe. Through these paths flowed silk, spices, textiles, precious metals, and technology. But the real value was not in the goods, it was in controlling the flow. Empires didn't rise because they produced everything. They rose because they stood in the right places, able to tax, protect, and influence trade itself. Rome understood this. Persia understood this. The great Islamic caliphates understood this, and the Chinese dynasties understood this early on. They knew something powerful. You don't need to control the entire world. You only need to control the paths the world moves through. And whenever those routes became unsafe, expensive, or unstable, power changed hands. That is exactly what happened when land routes lost efficiency. Wars, regional conflicts, and soaring logistical costs pushed global trade toward the oceans. That was the beginning of the age of maritime empires. Portugal, Spain, the Netherlands, and later the British Empire did not dominate the world by accident. They dominated it because they controlled the seas. Global power has always followed one central rule: logistical efficiency. If you are not subscribed yet, subscribe now. Here, we talk about economics and geopolitics without childish simplifications. As we move into the 21st century, China understood this logic perfectly. Modern power is no longer built only with factories or armies. It is built with infrastructure. That is why Beijing launched the New Silk Road, a $1 trillion project connecting Asia, Europe, and Africa through ports, railways, highways, pipelines, power grids, and even data cables. This is not just about trade. It is about long-term influence. Who finances ports influences governments. Who builds railways shapes political decisions. Who provides credit creates dependence. But these modern routes have a critical weakness. They pass through narrow choke points, maritime straits, unstable regions, conflict zones, and areas monitored by rival powers. And this is where the world map begins to change quietly, because global warming, regardless of politics, is producing a very real economic effect. The Arctic ice is melting, and as it melts, new sea routes are emerging. Shorter routes between Asia, Europe, and North America. Routes that reduce costs, time, and strategic risk. And at the exact center of this new chessboard stands Greenland. At first glance, it looks irrelevant, frozen, remote, empty. But in reality, Greenland is one of the most strategic territories on Earth. First, because of its location. It sits between the North Atlantic and the Arctic, controlling access to the trade routes of the future. Whoever dominates this region can monitor, protect, or interrupt global commercial flows. Second, because of natural resources. Greenland holds critical minerals, including rare earth elements essential for technology, defense, energy, and the next industrial revolution. Today, China dominates much of this global supply chain. At this level, economic dependence quickly becomes geopolitical vulnerability. Third, because of military power. For decades, the United States has maintained a military presence in Greenland, using it as a strategic forward post in the Northern Hemisphere. Allowing rival powers to expand influence in this region is simply not an option. If this is making sense so far, write in the comments, routes are power. America's interest in Greenland is not a joke, it's not exaggeration, and it's not media drama, it's strategy. In the 21st century, global power will not be decided only by GDP numbers. It will be decided by who controls trade routes, energy flows, and the strategic resources of the future. The Silk Road never disappeared. It simply transformed. First, it crossed deserts. Then it crossed oceans. Now it begins to cross ice. And those who understand this first will write the rules of the next global power cycle. If you want to understand how economics, history, and geopolitics truly connect in the real world, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. Because here, economic theory meets reality. See you in the next video.